"You're nothing but a relic, Mom. Nobody cooks like this anymore." Those words from my daughter Olivia still echo in my mind, cutting deeper than any knife in my kitchen ever could. After 30 years of preparing meals with love, of teaching her everything I knew about food and family traditions, my own child stood in my kitchen and dismissed my entire culinary identity as outdated garbage. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that while they were busy mocking my old-fashioned methods, I was secretly finalizing a 7-figure cookbook deal with one of the biggest publishing houses in the world. The contract was sitting in my drawer just 15 feet from where my daughter stood ridiculing me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Eleanor Wilson, though most people just call me Ellie. At 62, I've spent most of my life in the kitchen. Not because I had to, but because cooking has always been my sanctuary. A place where flour and butter transform into something magical, where family recipes passed down through generations come alive in my hands. My journey began in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Burlington, Vermont. My grandmother, Nora, taught me everything she knew about baking. Her hands, weathered and strong, guiding mine as we kneaded bread dough on Sunday mornings. "Cooking isn't just about feeding bodies," she'd say. "It's about nourishing souls." Those words became my mantra, my purpose. When I had Olivia at 28, I thought I'd found my perfect audience. A beautiful baby girl with curious eyes who'd grow up appreciating the meals I'd lovingly prepare. I'd teach her what my grandmother taught me, not just recipes, but patience, creativity, and the language of love spoken through food. My husband Thomas was supportive in those early years. He'd watch me cook with Olivia perched on my hip, her tiny hands reaching for measuring spoons and wooden spoons. "You two are peas in a pod," he'd say with a laugh. "She's going to be just like you." How wrong he was. As Olivia grew, so did her resistance to anything traditional. By her teenage years, she'd roll her eyes whenever I suggested we bake together. "Mom, nobody makes things from scratch anymore. That's what stores are." 4. Still, I persisted. I believed that eventually she'd come around, appreciate the heritage I was trying to preserve. Thomas and I divorced when Olivia was 16. He left me for his 27-year-old assistant, Vanessa, who considered microwaving leftovers to be cooking. The betrayal stung, but what hurt more was how quickly Olivia aligned herself with them. Suddenly, their prepackaged, convenience-focused lifestyle was modern and practical, while mine was stuck in the past. I kept cooking, though. Through tears and loneliness, I found solace in my kitchen. When Olivia went to college, I started a small blog, sharing my grandmother's recipes and my own adaptations. It was nothing fancy, just a way to keep myself busy during the quiet evenings. I never expected anyone to read it. But people did read it. First a handful, then hundreds, then thousands. My unpretentious approach to cooking resonated with people, tired of complicated ingredient-heavy recipes that required specialized equipment. My philosophy was simple. Good food made with care using ingredients most people already had in their pantries. 4 years ago, Olivia married Ryan, a financial analyst with a taste for the finer things in life. They moved into a sleek, modern home with a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine, all stainless steel and marble, with appliances that cost more than my first car. It was beautiful, certainly, but it felt cold, unlived in. I never saw any evidence that actual cooking happened there. Whenever I visited, Olivia would showcase their latest kitchen gadget or trendy ingredient. "This is Himalayan black salt. Mom, it's what all the top chefs are using now." Or, "We just got this sous vide machine. It's revolutionizing how people cook meat." Each comment felt like a subtle dig at my more traditional approach, but I smiled and nodded, not wanting to create tension. Meanwhile, my blog continued to grow. I expanded to posting cooking videos. Nothing fancy, just me in my kitchen, sharing stories while I cooked. People seemed to appreciate my straightforward approach and the history behind the dishes. I received messages from readers around the world who tried my recipes and felt connected to their own family traditions in the process. Your chicken pot pie recipe reminds me of the one my grandmother used to make, one reader wrote. I made it for my family last night, and for the first time, my kids didn't ask for takeout instead. Comments like these fueled me. While my own daughter rejected my culinary heritage, strangers embraced it. It was bittersweet, but I focused on the sweet part. Last Thanksgiving, everything came to a head. Olivia and Ryan invited me to their home for dinner. Don't worry about bringing anything, Mom, Olivia had said. Ryan's sister Melissa is an amazing cook. She's handling everything. I should have known better, but I brought a homemade apple pie anyway. My grandmother's recipe, with the lattice top and cinnamon sugar sprinkled across it. It wasn't fancy, but it was made with love. When I arrived, their house was filled with the scent of nothing. No roasting turkey, no simmering gravy, no baking pies. Instead, I found Olivia, Ryan, his sister Melissa, and her husband Jason, standing around sleek packaging from an upscale meal delivery service. Isn't this brilliant? Olivia beamed, showing me containers of pre-prepped ingredients. Melissa ordered this complete Thanksgiving meal kit. Everything's portion controlled, and only takes minutes to heat up. No mess, no fuss. I placed my pie on the counter, feeling suddenly foolish. I brought dessert, I said quietly. Melissa, a tall woman with immaculately highlighted hair, glanced at my pie and gave a tight smile. Oh, how traditional. We actually have a deconstructed pumpkin tart with cardamom foam for dessert. It's from that new patisserie downtown, the one with the 3-month waiting list. Ryan chimed in. Mom makes everything from scratch, Melissa. She's very old school. The way he said old school made it sound like an affliction, something to be pitied rather than respected. Throughout dinner, I sat quietly as they praised the perfectly balanced flavors of their reheated gourmet meal. My pie remained untouched on the counter, forgotten as they served the elaborate store-bought dessert. As we were cleaning up, Olivia approached me in the kitchen where I was wrapping up my pie to take home. Mom, you don't have to look so hurt. It's just that cooking has evolved. These days, it's about efficiency and presentation. Nobody has time to spend hours in the kitchen like you do. I looked at my daughter, this stranger who shared my blood but none of my values, and felt a deep sadness wash over me. Cooking isn't just about the end result, Olivia. It's about the process, the tradition, the past, she interrupted. It's about clinging to the past, Mom. The world has moved on. Maybe you should too. Ryan walked in at that moment. Honey, we should tell your mom about the news before she leaves. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He turned to me with a practiced smile. We're thinking of converting your old house into an Airbnb property. Now that you're retired, it's too big for just you, and the location has become quite valuable. We could manage it for you, of course. Take a small percentage for our services. I blinked at them, momentarily speechless. My house isn't for sale, I finally managed, and I'm not retired. I still teach cooking classes at the community center every Tuesday and Thursday. Olivia exchanged a look with Ryan. Mom, those classes are, well, they're charity work. You make what, $20 a session? That's not a career. And that house costs a fortune to maintain. Be practical. You're nothing but a relic, Mom, she continued, folding her arms across her chest. Nobody cooks like this anymore. Those classes you teach, those recipes you cling to, they're dinosaurs just like your blog. It's cute that a few old ladies follow you online, but let's be real. What do you actually have to show for all those years in the kitchen? My hands trembled as I picked up my pie. 30 years of nurturing this woman, of trying to instill values and traditions, had led to this moment. My child looking at me with something between pity and contempt. "I'll think about it," I lied, knowing I would do no such thing. I should head home now. The drive back to my house was a blur of tears and anger, not just at Olivia and Ryan, but at myself. How had I raised a daughter who valued trendiness over tradition, convenience over craft? Where had I gone wrong? When I got home, I set the untouched pie on my kitchen counter and sat down at my computer. I opened my email, needing some distraction from the disaster of an evening, and found a message that had arrived during dinner. The subject line read, "Confidential, cookbook deal, final contract attached." With shaking hands, I opened the email. 3 months earlier, I had been approached by Hartwell Publishing, one of the largest publishing houses in the culinary world. They had discovered my blog and were interested in turning it into a cookbook. Not just any cookbook, but a deluxe, full-color volume celebrating traditional American home cooking with modern sensibilities. I'd been in negotiations with them for weeks, sworn to secrecy until everything was finalized. The advances they discussed were more money than I'd ever seen in my life. But I'd been skeptical, waiting for them to realize their mistake and withdraw the offer. But here it was. The final contract. A 7-figure advance, a multi-book deal, a publicity tour, my own cooking show on their new streaming platform. I read the email 3 times, tears streaming down my face. All those years of being dismissed as outdated, of being told my skills were obsolete, and now this validation from people who actually understood food, who saw value in what I created. I didn't tell Olivia or Ryan. Not that night. And not in the weeks that followed as I signed the contract and began working with the publishing team. Let them think I was just a relic, desperately holding on to outdated traditions. Let them believe my house was their future investment property. I threw myself into the cookbook project with renewed enthusiasm. The publishing team paired me with a talented photographer who captured not just the food, but the stories behind each dish. They embraced my insistence on keeping recipes accessible to home cooks, on honoring the heritage while making gentle updates for modern kitchens. In January, I received an invitation to appear on Morning Sunrise, a nationally televised morning show, to promote my upcoming cookbook. The publicity team at Hartwell was orchestrating a major launch, positioning me as the authentic voice of American home cooking in an age of food fads and fleeting trends. The morning of the interview, I sat in the green room, nervously smoothing my new dress, a gift from the publisher who had kindly suggested that my usual attire of comfortable slacks and cardigans might not pop on camera. A young production assistant was briefing me on what to expect. "Just be yourself, Ms. Wilson. The host loves your story. The blog to cookbook journey is really resonating with our audience. We've already had a huge response to the preview recipes we shared on our website." I nodded, trying to calm my racing heart. "Thank you. I still can't quite believe any of this is happening." The door to the green room swung open and a familiar voice cut through the air. "Mom? What are you doing here?" I looked up to see Olivia standing in the doorway, dressed in her work clothes. She was an account executive at a marketing firm, in the same building as the television studio. Her expression was a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "Olivia," I said, standing up. I'm going to be on the morning show." She frowned, looking me up and down. "Why? Did something happen?" Before I could answer, the production assistant chimed in. "Ms. Wilson is our featured guest today. Her cookbook is launching next month, and pre-orders have already made it a bestseller. We're so excited to have her on the show." Olivia's jaw dropped. "Cookbook? What cookbook?" Just then, another production assistant appeared. "Ms. Wilson, you're on in 5 minutes. We need you for mic check. I grabbed my purse and followed, pausing briefly beside my stunned daughter. "We can talk after the show. There's a lot you don't know about your old-fashioned mother." The interview went better than I could have imagined. The host was warm and genuinely interested in my journey. We talked about my grandmother's influence, the blog that started as a personal project and grew beyond my wildest dreams, and the upcoming cookbook that had already generated so much buzz in the culinary world. "What makes your approach different, Ellie?" the host asked, holding up an advance copy of my cookbook with its beautiful cover, me in my kitchen, surrounded by the tools and ingredients that had defined my life. "I believe cooking should be accessible, not intimidating," I replied. "These recipes aren't about impressing people. They're about nurturing them. Each dish in this book has a story, a connection to the past that makes it meaningful. But I've also adapted them for today's kitchens and tastes. Tradition doesn't have to mean trapped in the past." The host smiled. "And I understand this isn't just a one-time project for you. Can you tell us about what's next?" I took a deep breath. This was the part we hadn't planned to announce yet, but the moment felt right. "Yes, I'm thrilled to share that I'll be hosting a new cooking show on Heritage Streaming Network beginning this summer. It's called Ellie's Kitchen, Old-Fashioned Cooking for Modern Times. We'll be traveling across America, exploring regional cooking traditions and bringing them into today's homes." The audience applauded, and I caught a glimpse of Olivia standing off stage, her expression unreadable. After the show, she was waiting for me in the green room. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" she demanded as soon as the door closed behind us. I set down the bouquet of flowers the show had given me. "Would you have believed me if I had? Or would you have dismissed it as another outdated project from your relic of a mother?" Her cheeks flushed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked quietly. "The last time I saw you and Ryan were planning to turn my house into an investment property because clearly I had nothing of value to offer the world anymore." Olivia had the grace to look ashamed. "We were just trying to help. You're living alone in that big house, barely making ends meet with those cooking classes." "I wasn't barely making ends meet," I interrupted. "I was doing what I loved, sharing what I knew. And now it turns out there's a whole world of people who value exactly what you've spent years mocking." She sank into a chair. "So all this time, while we thought you were just, I don't know, puttering around in your kitchen, you were actually building this whole career?" I nodded. "My blog has over 3 million subscribers now. The advance for this cookbook was 7 figures. The streaming show comes with an exclusive contract for 3 seasons, with options for international distribution." Her eyes widened. 7 figures? As in $1 million? "More," I said simply. She sat in stunned silence for a moment. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I replied, gathering my belongings. "But you might want to rethink that Airbnb plan. I'll be using my house as the primary filming location for the show." As I headed for the door, Olivia stood up. "Wait, are you still coming to dinner this weekend? We've been planning it for weeks. Ryan's boss will be there, and his wife is a huge foodie. They'd probably love to meet you, especially now that you're going to be famous." I paused, hand on the doorknob. 3 months ago, I would have jumped at the chance to finally be valued by my daughter and her husband, to be introduced not as the old-fashioned mother who couldn't keep up with the times, but as someone worthy of respect. But something had shifted in me. Perhaps it was the validation from the publishing world, or perhaps it was simply the culmination of years of being dismissed by the people who should have valued me most. "I'm afraid I can't make it," I said. "I have a dinner meeting with my production team that evening. We're finalizing the shooting schedule for the first season." Olivia's face fell. "Oh, well, maybe another time?" "Maybe," I agreed, though We both knew something fundamental had changed between us. I'll let you know when things calm down a bit. In the taxi heading home, I felt an odd mixture of emotions. There was satisfaction, certainly, at the look on Olivia's face when she realized her old-fashioned mother had become something remarkable while she wasn't looking. There was vindication in knowing that the traditions I valued had found their audience after all. But there was sadness, too. A mother shouldn't need external validation to earn her child's respect. A lifetime of love and sacrifice should count for something, cookbook deal or no cookbook deal. When I arrived home, my beloved home that would never become Ryan and Olivia's investment property, I walked straight to the kitchen. I pulled out my grandmother's recipe box, the battered metal container that had started me on this journey decades ago. I ran my fingers over the handwritten cards, some yellowed with age, others bearing stains from years of use. These weren't just recipes, they were my heritage, my story. And now, against all odds, they would become my legacy. I pulled out the card for my grandmother's apple pie, the very one I'd made for Thanksgiving, the one that sat untouched while Olivia and her in-laws ate their deconstructed pumpkin tart with cardamom foam. I set it on the counter and began gathering ingredients. Some traditions were worth preserving, even when the world moved on. Some forms of love never went out of style. As I rolled out the dough, I thought about the journey ahead. The book, tours, the television show, the newfound recognition. It would be exciting, challenging, and probably exhausting at times. But right here in my kitchen, with flour on my hands and my grandmother's recipes spread before me, I was exactly where I belonged. Old-fashioned or not, this was my truth. And finally, the world was ready to hear it. The following week, my cookbook hit the pre-order bestseller lists. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, congratulatory calls, and offers for collaborations. In the midst of it all, I received a text from Olivia. "I saw your cookbook featured in the window at Barnes & Noble today. Felt proud to say that's my mom. Can we talk soon?" I looked at the message for a long time before responding. The hurt hadn't disappeared, but perhaps there was room for something new to grow in its place. "I'm free for coffee next Tuesday," I wrote back. "I'll bring scones, the old-fashioned kind." I met Olivia at Rosewater Cafe the following Tuesday, arriving 15 minutes early with a basket of freshly baked lavender honey scones still warm from the oven. The cafe was tucked away on a quiet street, its large windows letting in streams of winter sunlight that pooled on the wooden floors. I chose a table in the corner, away from the morning rush, and ordered a pot of Earl Grey. My mind wandered to the whirlwind of the past week. Contract signings, photo shoots, meetings with the production team for my upcoming show. My kitchen had been temporarily transformed into a set designer's playground as they measured spaces and discussed lighting options. It still didn't feel quite real. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and Olivia walked in. She looked polished, as always in her tailored navy pantsuit. But there was something different about her demeanor, a hesitancy that hadn't been there before. She spotted me and approached with an uncertain smile. "You came," I said, rising to greet her. "Of course I came," she replied, hanging her coat on the back of her chair. "Though I half expected you to cancel. You must be incredibly busy these days." I pushed the basket of scones toward her. "Never too busy for this." Olivia lifted the cloth covering the basket and inhaled deeply. "They smell amazing." She took one, broke it in half, and bit into it. Her eyes closed briefly, just like I remember from when I was little. An unexpected lump formed in my throat. How long had it been since my daughter had eaten something I baked without criticism or comparison to whatever trendy confection was making the rounds in her social circle? "The recipe is going in the book," I said, pouring her a cup of tea. "Your great-grandmother's lavender scones, though I did add the honey glaze, my own little update." Olivia set down the scone, her expression turning serious. "Mom, I need to apologize. The things I said at Thanksgiving. And before that? Really? I was dismissive and disrespectful about your cooking, about your whole way of life. I stirred my tea, watching the amber liquid swirl. Why? That's what I've never understood. When you were little, you loved being in the kitchen with me. What changed? She looked down at her hands. I don't know exactly. Part of it was just teenage rebellion, I guess. Then college happened, and I met people who seemed so worldly and sophisticated. They talked about molecular gastronomy and fusion cuisine, and suddenly the food I grew up with seemed provincial. And then there was Dad, she continued, her voice quieter. After the divorce, I was so angry at you. He and Vanessa always had these elaborate dinner parties with caterers and exotic ingredients. It felt exciting, modern. Siding with them about food was a way to hurt you, I think. The admission stung, but it wasn't surprising. I had always suspected as much. And Ryan? I asked. Olivia sighed. Ryan comes from money. His family has always looked down on anything they consider ordinary. When we started dating, I was desperate to fit into their world. I began seeing everything through their eyes, including you. I nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. And now? What's changed? Seeing you on that show, hearing about your success. It made me realize how blind I've been. You weren't stuck in the past. You were preserving something valuable that I was too foolish to appreciate. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. I'm proud of you, Mom, and I'm sorry it took all this for me to see what was right in front of me. I wanted to accept her apology, to bridge the gap that had widened between us over the years. But something held me back. What about Ryan? Is he suddenly proud of his old-fashioned mother-in-law too, now that I have a book deal? Olivia had the grace to blush. He was. Surprised. Impressed, actually. He wants to introduce you to some of his clients who are interested in culinary investments. Of course he did. Ryan had always been able to sniff out a profitable opportunity. And the Airbnb plan for my house? Has that been shelved? Mom, that was never... She stopped herself, seemingly reconsidering her words. Yes, that idea is completely off the table. It was presumptuous and disrespectful. I see that now. We sat in silence for a moment, the morning bustle of the cafe continuing around us. A barista called out drink orders, the espresso machine hissed, and customers chatted quietly at nearby tables. I'd like us to start over, Olivia finally said. I've missed you, missed us. Could we maybe cook together sometime, like we used to? You could show me some of the recipes for your book. The request was so unexpected, so reminiscent of the daughter I'd once known, that I felt tears threatening. I'd like that, I said softly. Olivia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. How about this weekend? Sunday lunch? Sunday works, I agreed, then added with a slight edge I couldn't quite suppress. As long as you don't mind cooking in a relic's kitchen. Olivia winced. I deserved that. But I promise, no more dismissive comments. I want to learn, really. Learn from you. We finished our scones and tea, the conversation turning to lighter topics, her work projects, my upcoming television appearances. By the time we parted, something had shifted between us. Not healed entirely, but perhaps beginning to mend. As I watched her walk away, heading back to her office, I allowed myself a small hope that maybe, just maybe, the success that had come so unexpectedly into my life might also bring back the daughter I'd lost somewhere along the way. Sunday arrived crisp and bright, with the kind of winter sunshine that promises spring isn't too far away. I spent the morning preparing for Olivia's visit, gathering ingredients and pulling out my grandmother's handwritten recipe cards. We had decided to make beef bourguignon, a dish I'd perfected over decades but had never taught Olivia. At precisely noon, The doorbell rang. I opened it to find not just Olivia, but Ryan as well, standing on my porch with a bottle of expensive wine. "I hope you don't mind," Olivia said quickly, noticing my surprise. "Ryan wanted to come along. He's been talking about your cookbook all week." Ryan stepped forward, extending the wine bottle. "Congratulations on your success, Ellie. I've been telling everyone that my mother-in-law is about to become a culinary star." His smile was broad, his tone effusive, but there was a calculation in his eyes that I recognized all too well. Ryan had never done anything without an angle, without considering what benefit it might bring him. Still, I invited them both in, leading them to the kitchen where everything was laid out for our cooking session. Ryan looked around with new eyes, taking in the space that would soon be featured on a national cooking show. "You know," he said, running a hand along my butcher. "Block Island. This kitchen has great bones. With just a few updates, maybe some marble countertops, high-end appliances, it could really pop on camera." I raised an eyebrow. "The producers seem to like it just as it is. They said it has authentic charm." Ryan nodded quickly. "Oh, absolutely. I just meant for your comfort, of course. I have a client who's a kitchen designer to the stars. He could give you a great deal." "I'm sure he could," I replied dryly, turning to Olivia. "Ready to get started? We need to begin by prepping the vegetables." For the next hour, I guided Olivia through the process of making beef bourguignon, teaching her how to properly brown the meat, the importance of deglazing the pan, the slow development of flavors as the dish simmered. To my surprise, she was an attentive student, asking questions and absorbing techniques with genuine interest. Ryan hovered at the periphery, sipping wine and interjecting occasionally with suggestions for elevating the dish that I politely ignored. His phone rang frequently with calls he stepped out to take, his voice drifting from the living room in animated business discussions. During one such call, Olivia looked up from chopping carrots with a sheepish expression. "Sorry about Ryan. He means well, but subtlety isn't his strong suit." I smiled faintly. "It's fine. I'm just glad to have this time with you." She set down her knife. "Me too. And I want you to know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said at the cafe. About why I changed toward you and your cooking. It's not just what I told you. About Dad and wanting to seem sophisticated." "What else then?" I asked, stirring the simmering pot. Olivia hesitated. "I think part of me resented how content you seemed. Even after everything, the divorce, Dad's betrayal, having to start over on your own. You just kept cooking, kept finding joy in these simple things, while I was still angry, still trying to prove something." The honesty of her admission caught me off guard. I wasn't always content. "Olivia, there were many dark days, especially right after your father left. But cooking gave me purpose, connection to something larger than myself. It was how I survived." "I understand that now," she said quietly. "Watching you on that morning show, talking about your journey, I saw you in a completely different light. Not as my mom stuck in her ways, but as someone who found her path and followed it with integrity, despite what anyone else thought." Before I could respond, Ryan returned to the kitchen, slipping his phone into his pocket with a satisfied smile. "That smells incredible. How much longer until we eat?" "Another hour for the flavors to develop properly," I replied, checking the oven temperature. "Good things can't be rushed." Ryan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Say, while we wait, I had a business proposition I wanted to discuss with you, Ellie." Olivia shot him a warning look. "Ryan, we agreed this would just be family time." He waved her concern away. "It's a quick discussion, and it could be hugely beneficial for your mother. Ellie, with your new public profile, there's tremendous opportunity for brand partnerships. I have several clients who would pay handsomely to associate their products with your authentic, homespun image. My image? I repeated, setting down my wooden spoon. Your brand, Ryan clarified, warming to his topic. The traditional, back-to-basics cooking approach. It's very marketable right now. A pushback against all the food technology and molecular stuff. My clients are willing to offer substantial endorsement deals. I wiped my hands on my apron. What sort of clients are we talking about? Well, there's Meal Simple. They do those ready-to-heat gourmet meals delivered to your door. And Chef Tech has a new line of smart kitchen appliances that are very user-friendly for seniors. Seniors? I repeated, my voice cooling. Ryan backpedaled. Quickly. Not that you're... I just meant their target demographic is experienced home cooks who appreciate convenience. Convenience foods and smart appliances, I said slowly. You think I should endorse products that represent everything my cooking philosophy opposes? Ryan looked genuinely confused. But they're premium products, top of the line, and the compensation packages would be significant. 6 figures easily. I already have a 7-figure deal for being exactly who I am, doing exactly what I believe in, I pointed out. Why would I compromise that for products I would never use myself? Ryan's affable mask slipped for a moment, revealing the calculating businessman beneath. Because that's how this industry works, Ellie. The cookbook is just the beginning. The real money is in the endorsements, the product lines, the branded merchandise. I turned back to the stove, stirring the bourguignon with perhaps more force than necessary. I didn't get into this for the real money, Ryan. I got into it because I love cooking and sharing that love with others. Mom, Olivia interjected, shooting Ryan another warning glance. No one's saying you need to decide anything today. Let's just enjoy our meal and family time, okay? I nodded, letting the subject drop. But as we continued cooking, then eventually sat down to enjoy the fruits of our labor, I couldn't help noticing the way Ryan's eyes kept darting around my kitchen, assessing, calculating, seeing dollar signs where I saw memories and tradition. After they left, I sat alone at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea and reflecting on the afternoon. Olivia's genuine interest in cooking with me had been a pleasant surprise, a glimmer of the connection we once shared. But Ryan's presence had cast a shadow over the day, reminding me that in their world, everything, even relationships, came with a price tag and potential return on investment. My phone chimed with an email notification. It was from my editor at Hartwell Publishing, confirming our meeting the following day to discuss the final manuscript and marketing plans. The reality of my new life was still sinking in. The book, the show, the platform I now had to share my passion with the world. I thought about what Ryan had said about endorsements and brand partnerships. Was he right? Was I naive to think I could enter this industry and remain untouched by its commercial aspects? Would I eventually be forced to compromise my values to maintain my success? No, I decided firmly. I had built this unexpected career by staying true to myself, by valuing authenticity over trends. That wasn't going to change now, regardless of how much money was on the table. The next morning, I met with my editor, Charlotte, at the Hartwell offices. She was a brisk, efficient woman in her 40s with a genuine love of food that had made working with her a pleasure. The manuscript looks fantastic, Ellie, she said, leafing through the printed pages. The recipe testing team has confirmed that everything works perfectly, and the early feedback from reviewers has been overwhelmingly positive. I beamed with pride. I'm so glad. I wanted to make sure these recipes were accessible to everyone, not just experienced cooks. That's exactly what comes through, Charlotte assured me. Now let's talk about the marketing campaign. The publicity team has lined up morning shows, radio interviews, podcast appearances, and cooking demonstrations at major bookstores across the country. She slid a folder across the desk. Here's the preliminary tour schedule. It's ambitious, 20 cities in 6 weeks. But we really want to capitalize on the pre-release buzz. I opened the folder, scanning the itinerary with wide eyes. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, Denver, Boston. Cities I had only ever visited in my imagination. "This is overwhelming," I admitted. Charlotte smiled sympathetically. "It's a lot, I know. But we believe in you, Ellie. You're not just selling a cookbook. You're sharing a philosophy, a return to traditions that many people are craving in today's disconnected world." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'm ready. Nervous, but ready." "Excellent. Now, there's one more thing we wanted to discuss." Charlotte pulled out another document. "We've had several inquiries from companies interested in partnership opportunities, product, endorsements, collaborative merchandise lines, that sort of thing." My conversation with Ryan flashed through my mind. What sort of companies? Kitchenware manufacturers, specialty food producers, even a high-end appliance company. They're all very eager to associate their brands with yours. I set down the tour schedule. "Charlotte, I need to be clear about something. I won't endorse products I don't believe in or wouldn't use myself. If that limits our marketing opportunities, so be it." To my surprise, Charlotte smiled broadly. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Authenticity is your brand, Ellie. It's what readers connect with. What makes you special in a saturated market? We've already turned down several offers that didn't align with your values." Relief washed over me. "Thank you for understanding." "Of course. That said, there are some partnerships that might be perfect fits." She pulled out a proposal from a small, family-owned company that made handcrafted wooden cooking utensils, and another from an organic spice collective run by women farmers. These are the kind of collaborations we had in mind, companies whose values mirror your own. By the time I left the Hartwell offices, my head was spinning with plans and possibilities. The reality of my new life was finally sinking in. In just a few months, my cookbook would be on shelves across the country. My face would be on television screens, and my recipes, the same ones Olivia and Ryan had dismissed as outdated, would be prepared in thousands of kitchens. As I walked to the parking garage, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Is this Eleanor Wilson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Ellie," I confirmed. "Ms. Wilson, my name is Diana Lawson. I'm the lifestyle editor at Cuisine Monthly magazine. We'd love to feature you in our June issue, a cover story about your journey from home cook to cookbook author and television host." I stopped walking, momentarily speechless. Cuisine Monthly was the Bible of the culinary world, its cover a coveted spotlight typically reserved for celebrity chefs and restaurant innovators. I'm honored," I finally managed. "But I'm a bit surprised. Your magazine usually features professional chefs, not home cooks like me." Diana chuckled warmly. "That's exactly why we want to feature you, Ms. Wilson. You represent something authentic in a world of culinary showmanship. Our readers are tired of unattainable food trends. They want to reconnect with the kind of cooking that nourishes both body and soul. From what we've seen of your work, that's precisely what you offer." We arranged a time for the interview and photo shoot the following week. As I hung up, I leaned against a concrete pillar in the parking garage, overwhelmed by the surreal turn my life had taken. 6 months ago, I had been just another invisible older woman, my skills and knowledge dismissed as irrelevant by my own daughter and son-in-law. Now, the very traditions they had mocked were being celebrated, sought after, valued. The irony wasn't lost on me. Success had come not from chasing trends or reinventing myself, but from embracing who I had always been. When I arrived home, there was a package waiting on my porch, a small box wrapped in brown paper with my name and address handwritten on the front. Curious, I took it inside and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a velvet box, and nestled within it, a silver locket. I recognized it immediately. It had belonged to my grandmother, the same woman who had taught me to cook all those years ago. I had last seen it around my mother's neck before she passed away 5 years earlier. A note accompanied the locket, written in Olivia's elegant hand. "Mom, I found this in Dad's things when I was helping him organize his storage unit last weekend. He said he'd meant to give it to you years ago but never got around to it. I thought, you should have it now, as you embark on this new chapter of your life. Cooking with you yesterday reminded me of all the Sunday afternoons we spent in the kitchen when I was little. I miss those days, and I'm sorry for the years we've lost to my stubbornness and pride. I know a simple apology can't erase everything, but I hope it might be a start. I'm truly proud of you and everything you've accomplished. Love, Olivia." I opened the locket to find a tiny photograph inside. My grandmother in her kitchen, flour on her hands, smiling at the camera. It must have been taken 60 years ago, yet the joy on her face was timeless. Tears blurred my vision as I fastened the locket around my neck. It felt right somehow, carrying this piece of my grandmother with me as I prepared to share her culinary legacy with the world. The weeks that followed passed in a whirlwind of preparations. My kitchen was transformed into a television set, with lighting equipment, cameras, and a small production team, turning my once quiet sanctuary into a buzzing workspace. The cookbook's final edits were completed, the cover design approved, and advance copies sent to reviewers and influencers. Through it all, I found myself thinking of Olivia and the tentative steps we were taking toward reconciliation. After our cooking session, she had called several times, asking questions about recipes or techniques. Each conversation felt a little less strained, a little more like the relationship we had once shared. Ryan, too, had made efforts to stay connected, though his interest remained transparently tied to my newfound success. He sent links to articles about culinary empires and multi-channel revenue streams, with helpful notes like, "This could be you," attached. I appreciated Olivia's attempts at rebuilding our relationship far more than his transparent networking. One evening, as the production team was wrapping up a test shoot in my kitchen, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Are you free for dinner Friday? I'd like to cook for you this time. Just the two of us." I smiled, typing back a quick acceptance. Perhaps there was hope for us after all. Friday evening found me standing on Olivia and Ryan's doorstep, a bottle of wine in hand and curiosity in my heart. What would my trendy, convenience-focused daughter prepare when she was the one doing the cooking? Olivia answered the door wearing an apron, something I couldn't recall ever seeing before. "Mom, come in. I'm just finishing up in the kitchen." I followed her into their sleek, magazine-worthy kitchen, now showing signs of actual use. Flour dusted the countertops, pots bubbled on the stove, and the air was filled with the unmistakable aroma of pot roast? I asked in surprise, inhaling deeply. Olivia nodded, a touch of uncertainty in her eyes. "I found your recipe in an old email you sent me years ago. I've been practicing all week. I wanted to make something that would—" She hesitated. "Something that would remind you of home." I was touched beyond words. Of all the sophisticated, impressive dishes she could have attempted, she had chosen one of the most humble, traditional recipes in my repertoire. A dish I had made countless times during her childhood. "It smells wonderful," I said sincerely. Olivia beamed, visibly relieved. "I also made dinner rolls from scratch. They're not as good as yours, but they're edible." "Where's Ryan tonight?" I asked, noticing the table set for only two. "Business dinner downtown," Olivia replied, opening the oven to check on the rolls. "It's just us girls tonight." Something in her tone suggested this was deliberate rather than coincidental, but I didn't press. Instead, I settled at the kitchen island, sipping a glass of wine while watching my daughter navigate a kitchen she had previously used primarily for reheating takeout and displaying expensive gadgets. When we finally sat down to eat, I took my first bite of Olivia's pot roast with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. To my delight, it was good, Not perfect, certainly, but made with care and attention to detail. This is lovely, I said warmly. You've done a wonderful job with it. Olivia's smile was equal parts pride and relief. Really? The carrots aren't too firm? I wasn't sure about the timing. They're perfect, I assured her. Cooking isn't about absolute precision. It's about learning to trust your instincts, your senses, and you clearly did that. We ate in companionable silence for a few moments before Olivia set down her fork. Mom, there's something I need to talk to you about. Her serious tone set off alarm bells. What is it? Olivia took a deep breath. It's about Ryan and his enthusiasm, about your cookbook and show. I raised an eyebrow. You mean his enthusiasm for potential business opportunities? She nodded, looking uncomfortable. I want you to know that I've told him to back off. Your success is your own, and you don't need him trying to insert himself into it or push you toward endorsements you don't want. I was surprised by her directness. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's not just that, she continued, fidgeting with her napkin. The truth is, Ryan and we've been having problems for a while now. This was unexpected. From the outside, their marriage had always seemed picture perfect. Two ambitious professionals with matching luxury cars and carefully curated social media personas. I'm sorry to hear that, I said cautiously. Do you want to talk about it? Olivia's eyes filled with tears. He's not the person I thought I married. Everything with him is about appearances, about status, about what other people think. There's no substance beneath it all. I reached across the table to take her hand. How long have you felt this way? Too long, she admitted. But watching how he reacted to your success was a wake-up call. The way he immediately started calculating how to profit from it, how to insert himself into your journey. It made me see so clearly who he really is. And it made me wonder if that's who I've become too. I squeezed her hand. You're not Ryan, Olivia. But I've been influenced by him, by his values, she said sadly. The way I treated you, dismissed your cooking as outdated. That wasn't the real me. That was me trying to be the person Ryan and his family expected me to be. I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to absolve her of responsibility for the hurtful comments and dismissive attitudes over the years. But another part recognized that true reconciliation required honest acknowledgement of past wrongs. We all make choices about who we become, I said finally. But we can also choose to change course when we realize we've strayed from our true selves. Olivia nodded, wiping away a tear. That's what I'm trying to do now. Starting with this dinner. Starting with rebuilding my relationship with you. I'm glad, I said softly. I've missed you, the real you, for a very long time. We finished our meal talking about lighter subjects, her work projects, my upcoming book tour, memories of happier times from her childhood. By the time I left, something had shifted between us. The conversation hadn't erased the past, but it had opened. A door to a different kind of future. As I drove home, I thought about the strange, winding path that had led me here. If Olivia and Ryan hadn't dismissed my cooking so cruelly that Thanksgiving, would I have embraced the cookbook opportunity with such determination? If they hadn't suggested converting my house into an Airbnb, would I have fought so hard to create a new identity for myself? Sometimes I realized rejection becomes the very fuel we need to prove our worth, not to others, but to ourselves. The following Monday, I received a call from Charlotte at Hartwell Publishing. Ellie, I have some incredible news, she began, her voice vibrating with excitement. The Cuisine Monthly article has generated massive buzz. Pre-orders for your cookbook have tripled over the weekend. Tripled? I repeated, stunned. Yes, and there's more. The television network wants to expand your show from 6 episodes to a full season of 13, with an option for a second season before the first even airs. I sank into a kitchen chair, overwhelmed. That's wonderful news. It gets better, Charlotte continued. We've had interest from several major retailers about exclusive merchandise lines. Cookware, linens, specialty ingredients, all designed in collaboration with you and aligned with your philosophy of accessible heritage cooking. By the time the call ended, my life had expanded yet again into territory I had never imagined for myself. Not just author and television host, but lifestyle brand, culinary authority, ambassador for a way of cooking and living that honored tradition while remaining relevant in the modern world. That evening, as I sat at my kitchen table reviewing the latest proposals from Hartwell, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Olivia standing on my porch, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "can I stay here tonight? Ryan and I had a huge fight, and I just need some space to think." Without hesitation, I opened my arms. "Of course you can. You're always welcome here." As I held my daughter, feeling her shoulders shake with sobs, I reflected on the strange and unexpected turns life can take. 6 months ago, I had been a lonely widow, whose cooking was dismissed as outdated and irrelevant by her own child. Now I stood on the threshold of a new career, with my prodigal daughter seeking refuge in the very home her husband had been so eager to convert into an investment property. Life, like cooking, rarely followed a precise recipe. The most remarkable dishes often came from unexpected combinations, from embracing mistakes and finding new paths forward when the original plan went awry. I guided Olivia inside, closing the door on the gathering darkness. Whatever tomorrow brought, we would face it together, finding our way back to the core of what mattered. Not success or status or trendy appliances, but the simple, enduring bonds of family, nourished with patience and forgiveness. And perhaps, if we were lucky, a slice of homemade pie to sweeten even the bitterest moments of reconciliation. I made up the guest bedroom for Olivia, pulling fresh linens from the cedar chest and fluffing the pillows that hadn't seen use in years. She stood in the doorway watching me, still clutching the overnight bag she'd hastily packed before fleeing her marital home. "This room looks exactly the same," she said softly, running her fingers along the antique dresser. "Dad painted those wildflowers on the wall when I was 7. I smoothed the quilt, a wedding gift from my own mother that had somehow survived decades of life's upheavals. I could never bring myself to change it. It always felt like your space, even after you left." Olivia set her bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. "I was so desperate to get away from here, from everything familiar. I thought I wanted something completely different, sleek, modern, impressive. Now I just find it all so cold." I sat beside her, the mattress dipping under our combined weight. "Do you want to talk about what happened with Ryan?" She twisted her wedding ring, a massive diamond that had always seemed at odds with her slender hand. "He found out I'd been looking at apartment listings. Apparently, I left my laptop open, and he saw my search history." "You're thinking of moving out?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral despite the spark of hope her words ignited. "I've been considering it for weeks, maybe months," she admitted. "Today was just the final straw. He was so angry, Mom. Not sad, not concerned, just furious. That I would even think about disrupting our perfect life." I covered her hand with mine. "What was the final straw?" "This morning, I overheard him on the phone with a colleague, bragging about how his celebrity chef mother-in-law was going to be his ticket into the upper echelons of the culinary business world." She looked at me, her eyes swimming with tears. "He was discussing some deal with restaurants and exclusivity rights, claiming he had inside influence with you." When I confronted him, he didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. He said I was being naive, that of course we should capitalize on our connection to you. My stomach clenched. Ryan's ambition had always been evident, but this calculating exploitation of family ties crossed a line. The worst part, Olivia continued, is that he genuinely couldn't understand why I was upset. To him, relationships are just another form of networking, another path to advancement. And I realized that's exactly how he's always seen our marriage. As a beneficial merger, not a loving partnership. I squeezed her hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." "Don't be," she said, straightening her shoulders. "I should have seen it sooner. But I was so caught up in the lifestyle, in maintaining appearances, that I ignored all the warning signs." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her realization settling between us. "What happens now?" I finally asked. Olivia's laugh held no humor. "I have no idea. I just knew I couldn't stay there tonight. I needed space to think, somewhere, that felt real." The word hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning. How long had it been since authenticity had been valued in Olivia's world? In the sleek, curated existence she shared with Ryan, everything was for show: their home, their social media presence, even their marriage. "You can stay as long as you need," I told her. "This is your home too, always." Olivia nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her body shake with quiet sobs. How strange that in the midst of her pain, I felt a flicker of hope. Hope that perhaps this crisis might lead her back to herself, to the authentic and warm-hearted person I had raised before ambition and appearances took precedence. We spent that evening in the kitchen, where all important family discussions in our house had always taken place. I made comfort food, mac and cheese from scratch, with 3 kinds of cheese and a golden breadcrumb topping, while Olivia sat at the island, sipping tea and gradually unburdening herself of years of pent-up frustrations about her marriage. "He criticized everything about me," she confessed, tracing patterns in the condensation on her mug. "My clothes, my hair, even the way I spoke, always under the guise of helping me fit in with his world." I slid the casserole dish into the oven, setting the timer. "And you went along with it." "I did," she acknowledged. "I thought it was the price of admission to the life I thought I wanted. Successful, sophisticated, enviable. I was so afraid of ending up—" She stopped abruptly. "Like me?" I finished for her, turning to meet her gaze. Olivia had the grace to look ashamed. "Yes. Divorced, alone, stuck in the same house, the same routines. I was terrified of that kind of life, and Ryan offered an escape." "And now?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "Now I realize I was running from something beautiful towards something hollow." She set down her mug. "Ryan's world is all surface, no depth. Everything is about what other people think, how things appear, what connections can be leveraged. There's no room for simple joys, for authenticity, for tradition." The timer chimed, and I pulled the bubbling mac and cheese from the oven, its aroma filling the kitchen with childhood memories. I served us both generous portions, and we ate, in companionable silence for a few minutes. "This is exactly how I remember it," Olivia said, closing her eyes as she savored a bite. "You made this the night before my first day of high school. I was so nervous." I smiled, touched that she remembered. "Food is memory. That's what my grandmother always said. That's why I've fought so hard to preserve these recipes, these techniques. They're not just about feeding people. They're about keeping connections alive across generations." "I understand that now," Olivia said softly. "It took seeing other people value what you do. Publishers, television producers, food critics, for me to recognize what was right in front of me all along." "Better late than never," I replied, without bitterness. Later that night, after Olivia had gone to bed, I sat in my study reviewing the final manuscript for my cookbook. The pages were filled with not just recipes, but stories, The history of each dish, the memories associated with it, the evolution of techniques passed down through generations of women in my family. In the margins, my editor had written, "This is what sets your book apart, the humanity behind the food." Readers aren't just learning to cook, they're connecting with a tradition, a lineage. It was precisely what I had tried to share with Olivia throughout her life, what she had rejected in her quest for a more glamorous existence. And now, ironically, it was this very traditionalism, this authenticity, that had captured the imagination of publishers and producers, launching me into a spotlight I had never sought. Life had a strange way of coming full circle. The next morning, I woke early and tiptoed downstairs, not wanting to disturb Olivia. To my surprise, I found her already in the kitchen, dressed in an old t-shirt of mine she must have borrowed, measuring flour into my grandmother's ceramic mixing bowl. "What are you making?" I asked, filling the kettle for tea. "Buttermilk biscuits," she replied, not looking up from her task. "Or trying to, at least. I found your recipe card and thought I'd give it a shot." I watched as she cut cold butter into the flour with 2 knives, her technique unpracticed but earnest. "Want some help?" She shook her head. "I need to learn to do this myself. I've relied on other people for too long. Caterers, meal delivery, services, restaurants. It's time I developed some actual life skills." I hid my smile, busying myself with brewing tea. "Cooking is a life skill worth having." "Among others," she agreed, adding buttermilk to her mixture. I called in sick. "To work today, I need time to figure out my next steps." "That's understandable," I said, setting a mug of tea near her. "Has Ryan called?" 17 times. Her tone was dry. Plus about 30 text messages, ranging from angry to apologetic. I haven't responded. I nodded, not wanting to push. Whatever decisions Olivia made about her marriage needed to be her own. She worked the dough with focused concentration, her movements becoming more confident as she progressed. When she finally slid the tray of biscuits into the oven, there was a quiet pride in her expression that reminded me of her childhood, the way she'd beam when mastering a new skill, whether it was riding a bike or solving a difficult math problem. "While these bake," she said, wiping flour from her hands, "I want to hear more about your book. The real details, not the glossed-over version you've been sharing." I smiled, recognizing the olive branch. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. When does it come out? How many copies are they printing? What's the television show going to be like? Will you have to move to New York or Los Angeles?" The genuine interest in her questions warmed me more than I could express. For so long, Olivia had treated my cooking as an embarrassing relic, something to be tolerated rather than celebrated. Now she wanted details, specifics, insights into this new chapter of my life. Over slightly misshapen but delicious buttermilk biscuits, I shared the full scope of what was happening. The nationwide book tour scheduled to begin in a month. The 13-episode cooking show that would start filming in my kitchen next week. The merchandising deals being discussed with specialty retailers. "It's incredible," Olivia said, spreading homemade blackberry jam on her second biscuit. "You're going to be famous, Mom." I laughed, the idea still strange to me. "I'm going to be the same person I've always been, just with a broader audience for my recipes." "You say that now, but wait until you're recognized in grocery stores and asked for autographs at restaurants." The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. I had always been content with my quiet life, finding satisfaction in small pleasures rather than public accolades. Would success change that? Would it change me? "Whatever happens," I said, "this house, this kitchen, will always be my center. Fame is fleeting, home is forever." Olivia's expression softened. "You've always known exactly who you are, haven't you?" That's what I've envied most, I think. Your certainty, your contentment with yourself. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Charlotte from Hartwell Publishing. "Ellie, good morning. I hope I'm not calling too early, she began, her voice brisk and energetic as always. Not at all. What can I do for you? I responded, giving Olivia an apologetic glance. I have some news that couldn't wait. People magazine wants to feature you in their second act section. A full spread about your journey from home cook to culinary celebrity at 62. They're calling it The Grandmother Next Door Who Conquered the Culinary World. I laughed, despite myself. That makes me sound ancient and formidable. It's a compliment, I promise. They're framing it as an inspirational story about finding success later in life, about refusing to be sidelined because of age. It's exactly the kind of publicity we want. As Charlotte outlined the details of the photo shoot and interview, scheduled for later that week, I caught Olivia watching me with an unreadable expression. When I hung up, she said quietly, I'm beginning to understand just how significant this is, what's happening to you. It's still surreal, I admitted. Sometimes I wake up convinced I've dreamed the whole thing. You deserve it, she said firmly. All of it. I'm just sorry it took me so long to see that. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Olivia, tensed visibly. That's probably Ryan. He knows I'm here. I squeezed her hand. You don't have to see him if you're not ready. She took a deep breath. No, I should talk to him. Clear the air at least. I nodded, moving toward the door. I'll give you two some privacy. I need to run some errands anyway. No, Olivia said quickly. Stay, please. I'd rather not be alone with him right now. The uncertainty in her voice concerned me. Of course I'll stay if you want me to. I opened the front door to find Ryan on my porch, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit despite the early hour, a bouquet of expensive-looking flowers in his hand. His practiced smile faltered slightly when he saw me. Ellie, good morning. Is Olivia here? We had a misunderstanding last night, and I'd like to speak with her. I stepped back, allowing him entry but not returning his smile. She's in the kitchen. Ryan followed me down the hallway, his shoes clicking on the hardwood floors. When we entered the kitchen, Olivia was standing by the island, arms crossed protectively over her chest. Liv, sweetheart, Ryan began, extending the flowers. These are for you. I'm sorry about our disagreement. You caught me off guard with those apartment listings. Olivia made no move to accept the bouquet. It wasn't a disagreement, Ryan. It was a revelation. For both of us, apparently. Ryan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Let's not be dramatic. Every marriage has rough patches. We can work through this. I busied myself at the sink, giving them the illusion of privacy while remaining present as Olivia had requested. Can we? Olivia asked, because I'm not sure what we're working toward anymore. What exactly is our endgame, Ryan? Bigger house? More prestigious address? Higher net worth? When is it enough? Ryan set the flowers on the counter, his expression shifting to one of concern. You're upset, I understand. But this isn't like you, Liv. You've always been as ambitious as I am. That's why we work so well together. No, Olivia said quietly. That's why we worked well together in your narrative. The truth is, I've been playing a role for years, trying to be the perfect wife for your perfect life. And I'm exhausted. Ryan's gaze darted to me, then back to Olivia. Perhaps we should continue this conversation at home, privately. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of my mother, Olivia replied firmly. Ryan's veneer of politeness slipped. Slightly. Fine, you want honesty? I think you're having some kind of identity crisis, possibly influenced by your mother's unexpected success. Suddenly, the simple life seems appealing because it's working for her. But that's not who you are, Liv. You're not built for contentment, with little. You crave more just like I do. That's why you left all this behind in the first place. His words hung in the air, razor sharp and revealing. I kept my back turned, focusing on washing dishes that didn't need cleaning, allowing Olivia to respond in her own way, You're right about one thing, she finally said. I did leave all this behind because I wanted more. But I was wrong about what more meant. I thought it was about status, possessions, appearances. Now I see that more can also mean authenticity, purpose, genuine connection, all the things our marriage lacks. Ryan's face hardened. So you're what? Finding yourself? Having a midlife crisis at 34? Going to start baking pies and posting nostalgic recipes online like your mother? The contempt in his voice made me flinch, but Olivia stood taller. If that's what brings me joy, yes. But that's not even the point. The point is that I want a life with meaning beyond impressing other people. And I'm not sure that's something you can understand, let alone share. Ryan's composure cracked. This is ridiculous. You have a beautiful home, a successful husband, a lifestyle most women would kill for, and you're throwing it away for. What? Some romanticized notion of simple living? Homemade biscuits and heartwarming traditions? No, Olivia replied calmly. I'm reclaiming myself. The person I was before I started measuring my worth by your standards. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw something I hadn't witnessed in years. My daughter standing firm, eyes clear, voice steady. Not the polished, carefully controlled persona she'd cultivated as Ryan's wife, but the authentic young woman who had once possessed strong opinions and the courage to voice them. Ryan must have seen it too, because his approach shifted suddenly. Listen, Liv, I understand you need some space. Take all the time you need here with your mother. When you're ready to come home, we can discuss changes, compromises. Maybe cut back on some social obligations, plan that vacation you've been wanting. His tone was conciliatory, but his eyes remained calculating. This wasn't genuine understanding. It was tactical retreat. Olivia seemed to recognize it too. I'm not looking for minor adjustments, Ryan. I'm reconsidering everything, including our marriage. The word landed like a grenade in the kitchen. Ryan's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. One fight and you're ready to throw away 5 years of marriage? Do you have any idea how this will look? What people will say? That's exactly the problem, Olivia replied sadly. Your first concern is appearances, not our actual happiness. Ryan turned to me suddenly, his expression accusatory. This is your influence, isn't it? Filling her head with ideas about independence and authenticity now that you've had a taste of success. Well, Ellie, not everyone can reinvent themselves at 60. Some of us live in the real world where image and connections matter. I turned to face him fully, setting down the dish towel. Olivia is making her own choices, Ryan. She always has. I'm just here to support her, whatever she decides. How convenient, he sneered. Now that you have a book deal and a TV show, you can afford to be philosophical about authentic living. When you were just a lonely divorcee clinging to outdated recipes, you weren't quite so smug. His words were designed to wound, to remind me of the years when I had been invisible, overlooked, dismissed. But they no longer had the power to hurt me. You're right, Ryan, I said calmly. Success has changed my perspective. It's shown me that staying true to myself was always the right choice, even when others, including my own daughter, couldn't see the value in it. Perhaps that's a lesson Olivia is learning now, in her own way. Ryan's jaw clenched. He turned back to Olivia, his voice low and intense. Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we've built together? To start over from nothing when you're in your prime? I'm not starting from nothing, Olivia replied. I'm starting from truth, and that's a foundation worth building on. For a moment, I glimpsed real pain in Ryan's eyes, a flash of genuine loss amid the anger and calculation. Whatever his flaws, he did care for Olivia in his own way. Perhaps he even loved her, within the limited parameters of his understanding of love. Take some time, he finally said, regaining his composure. Think about what you're giving up. When you're ready to discuss this rationally, You know where to find me." With that, he turned and left, leaving the bouquet of flowers untouched on the counter. We heard the front door close, then the sound of his luxury car starting up and pulling away. Olivia released a shaky breath. Well, that went pretty much as expected. I moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "Better than I thought I'd be, actually. Saying those things out loud, about reconsidering our marriage, about wanting authenticity, it felt right. Scary, but right." "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "I need time to think, to figure out what I really want. But I do know I can't go back to living someone else's version of a perfect life." I squeezed her shoulder gently. "Whatever you decide, you're not alone." She covered my hand with hers. "I know. That's the one thing I'm certain of right now." We stood together in the kitchen, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the simple, honest space where I had taught her to bake cookies as a child, where I had perfected the recipes that would soon be published in a cookbook, where she now stood at a crossroads in her life. In that moment, I realized that success had given me more than financial security or public recognition. It had given me back my daughter, not through the achievement itself, but through the validation of values I had always held dear. Values that Olivia was now, finally, beginning to recognize in herself as well. The next few days settled into an unexpected but comfortable routine. Olivia took a leave of absence from her marketing firm, citing family matters. She spent her days helping me prepare for the upcoming television shoot, organizing recipe cards, shopping for ingredients, and learning to cook dishes she had once dismissed as old-fashioned. Each evening, we sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea, talking more openly than we had in years. She shared her growing disillusionment with the life she'd built with Ryan, the exhausting social obligations, the constant pressure to maintain appearances, the emptiness beneath the perfect surface. "I used to think happiness was about achieving goals," she confessed one night. "The right job, the right house, the right social circle. But I kept reaching those milestones and feeling nothing. Just relief that I could check another box, followed immediately by anxiety about the next goal." I nodded, understanding all too well. That kind of happiness is like a horizon, always visible, never reachable. Exactly. Meanwhile, I watched you find joy in the simplest things: a perfect loaf of bread, a jar of homemade preserves, teaching those cooking classes to people who might never become gourmet chefs, but who left smiling every time. I smiled, touched by her observation. Those were always the moments that mattered most to me. Not the accomplishments, but the connections. "I think that's what I've been missing," Olivia said softly. "Real connections, with myself, with others, with something meaningful beyond just success." Her words resonated deeply. Wasn't that precisely what my cookbook celebrated? Not just recipes, but the human connections they fostered across time and generations? The following week brought the first day of filming for my television show. The production team arrived early, transforming my kitchen into a set with additional lighting, multiple cameras, and a small crew of technicians. The producer, a kind woman named Meredith with silver-streaked hair and infectious enthusiasm, walked me through the day's schedule. "We'll start with your introduction to the series, then move into the first recipe. Your grandmother's apple pie, right?" She consulted her notes. "We want to capture the story behind it, the personal connection that makes it special." I nodded, trying to calm my nerves. It was the first recipe she taught me when I was just 8 years old. We made it together every Sunday for years. "Perfect. That's exactly the kind of narrative we want to share." Meredith glanced at Olivia, who was arranging ingredients on the counter. "And your daughter will be helping today?" "Just behind the scenes," Olivia replied quickly. "I'm not camera ready." Meredith tilted her head, studying Olivia thoughtfully. Actually, we've been discussing incorporating family elements into some episodes. Would you consider appearing in a segment with your mother? The intergenerational aspect of cooking traditions is a theme we're keen to explore. Olivia looked startled. Me? On camera? I don't know the first thing about cooking traditional recipes. That's precisely what would make it compelling, Meredith explained. Your mother teaching you, passing down these traditions in real time. The audience would love that authenticity. I watched Olivia's face, seeing the conflict there, hesitation, mixed with curiosity, perhaps even a touch of excitement. You don't have to decide now, I told her. Maybe watch today's filming first, see how it goes. Olivia nodded, relieved. That makes sense. Let me observe first. When the cameras finally began rolling, my initial nervousness melted away surprisingly quickly. The kitchen was my domain, and talking about food, its history, its preparation, its ability to connect people, came naturally to me. The script was loose, allowing for genuine moments and spontaneous stories. This rolling pin belonged to my grandmother, I explained, holding up the well-worn wooden implement. It's traveled with me through 3 moves, 2 marriages, and countless holiday baking sessions. When I hold it, I can almost feel her hands guiding mine, showing me how to apply just the right pressure to create the perfect crust. As I demonstrated the techniques for making apple pie, the precise way to cut butter into flour, the secret to achieving a flaky crust, the perfect balance of spices for the filling, I found myself falling into a comfortable rhythm. This wasn't performance. It was sharing, teaching, connecting. From her position just off camera, Olivia watched with undisguised pride. Each time I glanced her way, she offered an encouraging smile or a subtle thumbs up, her presence a steadying influence in this unfamiliar territory. By the time we wrapped the first episode, the production team was buzzing with excitement. That was fantastic, Ellie, Meredith enthused, reviewing footage on a small monitor. You're a natural on camera, authentic, warm, knowledgeable without being intimidating. Viewers are going to fall in love with you in this show. As the crew packed up their equipment, Olivia approached me with a thoughtful expression. Meredith's suggestion about me appearing on the show. I've been thinking about it. And? I prompted, wiping flour from my hands. I'd like to try it, she said decisively. Not as some polished expert, but as who I really am. Someone learning these traditions for the first time. Someone reconnecting with a heritage I almost lost. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. This wasn't just about a cooking show. It was about reconciliation, about bridging the gap that had widened between us over the years. I'd love that, I said. Simply. Olivia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Good, because I think I'm finally ready to learn what you've been trying to teach me all these years. As we cleaned up the kitchen together, returning it to its pre-filming state, I reflected on the strange, winding path that had led us here. My daughter had once fled from everything I represented, seeking a life of sophistication and status. I had once been dismissed as outdated, irrelevant, a relic clinging to traditions no one valued anymore. Now, through an unexpected twist of fate, those very traditions had brought me success beyond anything I'd imagined. And more importantly, they had brought my daughter back to me, not because of the success itself, but because that success had finally opened her eyes to the value of what had been there all along. Sometimes I realized the most profound lessons come wrapped in the most unlikely packages. In my case, it had taken a cookbook deal and television show to reveal what truly mattered. Not fame or fortune, but the authentic connections that give life its deepest meaning. And as Olivia and I worked side by side in the kitchen that had always been the heart of our home, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, for her marriage, for my new career, for our relationship, we would face them together, nourished by the same traditions that had sustained generations of women in our family before us. Some recipes, after all, were timeless. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of filming the 4th episode of my cooking show, demonstrating how to make my great-aunt Viola's peach cobbler, when Meredith called for an unscheduled break. She hurried across the kitchen set, tablet in hand, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern. "Ellie, you need to see this," she said, handing me the tablet. The screen displayed a business news website with the headline, "Culinary Upstart Gourmet Now Acquires Thomas & Sons Kitchenware in Surprising Industry Shakeup." I scanned the article quickly, my heart sinking as I read the details. Gourmet Now was a venture capital-backed meal delivery service that had been aggressively expanding in the past year. Thomas & Sons was the family-owned company I had recently agreed to collaborate with on a line of traditional cooking tools, cast iron skillets, wooden spoons, and other heirloom-quality items designed to last generations. "They were just acquired yesterday," Meredith explained. "The announcement went live this morning. Gourmet Now's CEO says they plan to modernize the Thomas & Sons brand and pivot to tech-forward kitchen solutions." I set down the tablet, trying to process this unexpected development. The Thomas & Sons partnership had been especially meaningful to me. A small, family-run business that shared my values of quality, tradition, and durability. We had spent weeks designing products that would complement my cookbook and television show, items that would help home cooks create the same dishes I was sharing. "What does this mean for our partnership?" I asked. Meredith grimaced. "Charlotte from Hartwell called while you were filming. Gourmet now wants to renegotiate the entire agreement. They're proposing a different direction: smart appliances, meal, kit tie-ins, cooking apps." "That's not what I signed up for," I said firmly. "I chose Thomas & Sons specifically because they make things that last, tools that can be passed down through generations. I don't want my name on disposable gadgets or subscription services." "I understand," Meredith assured me. "Charlotte is pushing back hard, but Gourmet Now has deep pockets and a very aggressive growth strategy. They're insisting on a meeting with you this week." I nodded, my mind racing. This was the first major challenge to my vision since embarking on this unexpected career path. Would I need to compromise my values to maintain momentum? Or could I hold firm, even if it meant losing this particular opportunity? "Tell Charlotte I'll meet with them," I decided. "But I'm not changing my position on what kinds of products I'm willing to endorse." Meredith squeezed my shoulder supportively. "For what it's worth, I think you're absolutely right to stand your ground. Your authenticity is what makes you special in this industry. Don't let anyone dilute that." We resumed filming, but my mind kept drifting to the upcoming confrontation. I had spent decades being dismissed as outdated, only to find that my traditional approach to cooking had struck a chord with a public tired of food trends and gadgets. Would corporate pressure now force me back into that box of irrelevance? When I arrived home that evening, I found Olivia in the kitchen, practicing her pie crust technique. Flour dusted her cheeks, and her forehead was creased in concentration. 3 previous attempts lay abandoned on the counter, each showing different flaws: too dense, too crumbly, too overworked. "How's it going?" I asked, setting down my bag. She looked up with a rueful smile. "I'm beginning to understand why you always said baking is both science and art. I've followed the exact same recipe 4 times now, and each batch has turned out completely different." I washed my hands and moved beside her. "Let me see your technique." I watched as she cut butter into flour, her movements still hesitant but more confident than they had been even a week ago. There was something deeply moving about seeing my daughter embrace these skills I had tried to teach her for so many years. "The secret is in how cold your butter is and how lightly you handle the dough," I explained, guiding her hands. "Feel that? That's the texture you're looking for." Olivia nodded, her focus absolute. "I want to get this right before we film next week. I don't want to embarrass you on your own show. You could never embarrass me, I assured her. The whole point is to show you learning. That's what makes it authentic. Authentic. The word hung between us, suddenly loaded with new significance given the day's developments. What's wrong? Olivia asked, catching my expression. You seem preoccupied. I told her about the Gourmet Now acquisition and the pressure to change direction with my product line. As I spoke, I realized how much I valued having someone to confide in about these new professional challenges. For so long, I had faced life's difficulties alone, keeping my worries to myself. That's outrageous, Olivia said when I finished. They can't force you to put your name on products you don't believe in. Technically, they can't, I agreed. But they can make things very difficult. This partnership was a significant part of the overall marketing strategy for the book and show. Olivia wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, her expression thoughtful. You know who might have some insight about this? Ryan. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. Ryan? Whatever his faults, he knows the business world, she acknowledged. And he's handled similar corporate acquisitions at his firm. He might have suggestions for how to approach this meeting. I was touched by her willingness to leverage her connection with Ryan, despite their current estrangement. Are you comfortable reaching out to him about this? Olivia hesitated, then nodded. For you, yes. Besides, we need to talk anyway. I can't hide out here forever, avoiding difficult conversations. You're not hiding, I corrected gently. You're regrouping. There's a difference. She smiled faintly. Maybe. But either way, it's time I faced things head on. Let me call him about your situation. To my surprise, Ryan agreed to come over that very evening to discuss strategy. He arrived dressed impeccably as always, his manner cordial if slightly reserved. If he harbored resentment about Olivia's continued absence from their home, he kept it well hidden. Based on what Olivia's told me, you're dealing with a classic corporate steamroll tactic, he explained, seated at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee. Gourmet Now bought Thomas & Son specifically to get access to your partnership. Your brand reputation for authenticity and tradition is valuable to them. It gives credibility to their tech-focused approach. So what should I do? I asked. I don't want to sabotage my book launch, but I can't endorse products I don't believe in. Ryan leaned forward, his business persona fully engaged. You're in a stronger position than you realize, Ellie. Your cookbook pre-orders are exceeding expectations. Your show has generated tremendous buzz, and the Cuisine Monthly feature positioned you as the authentic voice in a sea of food trends. Gourmet Now needs your endorsement more than you need their partnership. I glanced at Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. Whatever personal issues existed between them, she clearly still respected Ryan's professional expertise. What's your advice? For the meeting? I asked him. Go in with a clear bottom line, specific items you won't compromise on. Be prepared to walk away if necessary. And most importantly, remind them that your audience values your authenticity above all else. If you start endorsing products that contradict your philosophy, you'll lose the very thing that makes you marketable. It was sound advice, delivered with confident precision. In this moment, I could see what had initially attracted Olivia to Ryan: his competence, his strategic mind, his ability to cut through complications and identify leverage points. Thank you, I said sincerely. That's very helpful. Ryan inclined his head in acknowledgement. Happy to assist. Your success benefits all of us, after all. A hint of his calculating nature slipped through, but I chose to focus on the practical value of his guidance rather than his motivations. After discussing business, an awkward silence fell over the kitchen. Olivia cleared her throat. Ryan, since you're here, maybe we should talk. He set down his coffee mug. I thought you might say that. Should your mother give us some privacy? No, Olivia said firmly. Anything you have to say can be said in front of her. She's been my strength through all of this. Ryan's jaw tightened briefly, but he nodded. As you wish. I've been doing a lot of thinking since your departure. I recognize that I may have been somewhat inflexible about certain aspects of our lifestyle. Inflexible, Olivia repeated, a hint of disbelief in her tone. Yes, he continued smoothly. And I'm prepared to make adjustments. We could scale back our social obligations, perhaps take that sabbatical you've mentioned wanting. I could even support your interest in traditional cooking, if that's something you genuinely want to pursue. I watched my daughter's face carefully, curious how she would respond to these concessions. Weeks ago, they might have seemed significant, even generous. But now? Olivia met Ryan's gaze directly. The issue isn't our schedule or specific activities, Ryan. It's our fundamental values. What we believe is important, how we measure success, what kind of life we want to build together. People's values evolve, he countered. We can grow together in new directions. Can you? She challenged. Can you truly be happy with a life that isn't centered on achievement, status, and appearances? Because that's what I'm questioning. Now. Ryan's polished facade cracked slightly, frustration seeping through. What exactly do you want from me, Olivia? I'm offering compromise. I'm willing to adjust. What more can I do? It's not about doing, she replied softly. It's about being. About whether the person I've become is still compatible with the person you are. I felt like an intruder witnessing this raw moment between them. Yet Olivia had specifically asked me to stay. Perhaps my presence gave her strength to speak truths she might otherwise soften. Ryan stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. This is absurd. 5 years of marriage, and suddenly you're questioning everything because your mother struck it lucky with a cookbook? You're having some kind of identity crisis, and you're using me as the scapegoat. Olivia remained calm. This isn't about my mother's success, though I admit that was a catalyst. It's about seeing clearly for the first time in years. About recognizing that I've been trying to fit myself into a life that fundamentally doesn't satisfy me. And what would satisfy you? He demanded. Baking pies? Living in a quaint little house with flower pots on the windowsills? You'd be bored within a month. You're not built for simplicity, Olivia. You never have been. You don't know what I'm built for, she replied evenly. Because I've never allowed myself to discover it. I've been too busy becoming what I thought I should be, what you wanted me to be. Ryan turned to me suddenly. This is your influence. You've turned her against me, against everything we've built together. I shook my head. Olivia makes her own choices, Ryan. Always has. I'm just giving her space to figure out what she truly wants. He scoffed. How convenient that what she truly wants aligns perfectly with your way of life, now that it's been validated by publishing deals and television shows. That's enough, Olivia interjected firmly. My mother has nothing to do with the problems in our marriage. Those were there long before her cookbook deal. Ryan fell silent, his expression calculating as he reassessed the situation. After a moment, his demeanor shifted, softening deliberately. You're right. I apologize to both of you. This is a difficult time, and I'm not handling it well. He moved back to the table, sitting down with a sigh. Olivia, I love you. Whatever you need, time, space, couples therapy, I'm willing to try. Just don't throw away everything we've built together without giving us a real chance. The sincerity in his voice seemed genuine, though I couldn't help noticing how quickly he had pivoted from accusation to accommodation when his initial approach failed. Was this adaptability part of what made him successful in business? This ability to recognize when a strategy wasn't working and immediately try another? Olivia's expression softened slightly. I appreciate that, Ryan. But I need more time to think clearly about what I want. Going back to our house, our routine, our life together, it would be too easy to fall back into old patterns without resolving anything. How much time? He pressed. I don't know, she admitted. This isn't a business negotiation with a timeline and deliverables. It's me trying to understand who I really am and what I truly want. Ryan nodded slowly, visibly restraining his impulse to push for specific commitments. I understand. Take the time you need. Just keep the door open, please. Don't make permanent decisions in a temporary emotional state. It was a reasonable request, delivered with what appeared to be genuine vulnerability. Whatever else he might be, Ryan clearly cared for Olivia in his own way. I can promise that, Olivia agreed. No permanent decisions yet. After Ryan left, Olivia and I sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the conversation settling around us. That was intense, I finally said. Are you okay? She nodded slowly. Better than I expected, actually. There was a time when his disappointment would have crushed me, when his approval was everything. Now I can see him more clearly, both his strengths and his limitations. And where does that leave you? I asked gently. Still figuring things out, she admitted. But more certain than ever that I can't simply go back to the life we had before. Too much has changed, in me, mostly. I covered her hand with mine. Growth is rarely comfortable, but it's always worthwhile. She smiled faintly. When did you get so wise, Mom? Around the same time I became an overnight success at 62, I replied dryly. We both laughed, the tension of the evening breaking like a fever. The meeting with Gourmet Now executives took place 3 days later in the sleek conference room of a downtown hotel. Charlotte from Hartwell Publishing accompanied me, along with a lawyer from the publishing house's legal team. Meredith attended as well, representing the television production company's interests. The Gourmet Now team was exactly as I had imagined, young, confident, dressed in that particular style of casual expensiveness that signaled tech industry success. Their CEO, a woman named Vanessa with a razor-sharp bob and piercing blue eyes, led the conversation. We're thrilled to continue the partnership Thomas & Sons established with you, Eleanor, she began, using my full name, despite never having been invited to do so. We see tremendous potential for expanding the brand into digital territories while honoring the traditional roots that make your approach so appealing. I listened politely as she outlined their vision, an app that would offer guided cooking experiences, smart utensils that could measure ingredients and adjust temperatures automatically, meal kits that would deliver pre-portioned ingredients for my recipes directly to consumers' doors. We're not looking to replace traditional methods, Vanessa assured me. Just enhance them for today's busy home cook. Not everyone has time to source ingredients or learn techniques from scratch. When she finished her presentation, all eyes turned to me. Charlotte gave me an encouraging nod, letting me know I had their full support, whatever my decision. Your vision is certainly innovative, I began carefully, but it fundamentally contradicts what my brand represents. I teach cooking as a connection to tradition, as a hands-on experience that engages all the senses. There's value in the effort, in the tactile experience of working with food. Vanessa's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened slightly. With respect, Eleanor, that perspective limits your audience to people who already have cooking skills and available time. We're offering a way to make your recipes accessible to everyone. By removing the very elements that make cooking meaningful, I countered. The learning, the tactile experience, the development of intuition and skill. Those aren't obstacles to overcome with technology. They're the heart of what cooking is about. A younger executive leaned forward. Our market research shows that while people love the idea of traditional cooking, they want shortcuts. They aspire to cook like you, but they don't have the time or patience to develop those skills. Then I should be helping them develop that patience. not offering them shortcuts that ultimately leave them disconnected from their food, I replied, firmly. Vanessa's professional demeanor slipped slightly. I'm not sure you understand the market realities, Eleanor. Traditional cookbooks and equipment are niche categories. The real growth is in convenience products, meal solutions, and kitchen technology. I understand the market perfectly well, I said. I also understand that my success comes from offering something different from those trends. A return to basics, to traditions, to cooking as a meaningful activity rather than a problem to be solved with technology. The room fell silent as the executives exchanged glances. Finally, Vanessa spoke again, her tone carefully measured. What exactly are you proposing, then? I want to proceed with the original partnership as negotiated with Thomas & Sons, I stated clearly. Quality, traditional cooking tools designed to last generations. No apps, no smart technology, no meal kits. Just well-crafted implements that help people connect with cooking in a meaningful way. A muscle twitched in Vanessa's jaw. That's a very narrow vision. You're limiting your potential reach and revenue. I'm staying true to my values, I corrected. And I believe there's a substantial audience that shares those values. Charlotte stepped in smoothly. The pre-order numbers for Eleanor's cookbook support that belief. There's clearly a significant market for authentic, traditional approaches to cooking. The meeting continued for another hour, with proposals and counter-proposals flying across the table. Throughout, I maintained my position. I would only lend my name to products that aligned with my philosophy of cooking as a meaningful tradition worth preserving. By the end, we had reached a compromise of sorts. Gourmet now would create a specialized division to continue the original Thomas & Sons partnership, producing the traditional cooking implements we had designed together. They agreed to keep their tech-focused initiatives separate from my brand, at least for now. As we left the meeting, Meredith squeezed my arm encouragingly. You stood your ground brilliantly. Not many new personalities would have the courage to push back against a corporation like Gourmet now. It wasn't courage so much as clarity, I replied. I spent too many years being dismissed as irrelevant to compromise now that people are finally listening. Back at home, I found Olivia in the study, surrounded by stacks of papers and open notebooks. She looked up when I entered, her expression both determined and slightly sheepish. What's all this? I asked, gesturing to the organized chaos around her. Research, she replied. I've been thinking about what I want to do next, professionally speaking. I can't stay on leave from the marketing firm forever, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to go back at all. I sat in the chair opposite her. What are you considering instead? Something connected to food education, she said, showing me a notebook filled with ideas. Not chef training or anything like that, but programs that teach cooking as life skills, especially for communities where those traditions are being lost. I scanned her notes, impressed by the thought she had already put into this. There were outlines for workshops, community garden initiatives, intergenerational cooking classes that would pair seniors with young people to preserve family recipes. This is remarkable, Olivia. When did you develop all this? She smiled shyly. It's been percolating for a while, I guess. Working with you these past few weeks, seeing how food connects to heritage, to identity. It's awakened something in me. And watching you film your show, seeing how teaching these skills brings you joy, I think maybe that's what I've been missing. Purpose beyond just success. Her words touched me deeply. After years of dismissing my cooking as outdated and irrelevant, Olivia was not only embracing these traditions, but considering building a career around sharing them with others. What about your marketing experience? I asked. Would you be starting from scratch? That's the beauty of it, she explained, enthusiasm lighting her features. I could use those skills. The event planning, the community outreach, the program development. But instead of promoting luxury products no one really needs, I'd be promoting something with genuine value. I reached across the desk to squeeze her hand. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'd be happy to help however I can. Actually, she said, suddenly looking nervous, I was hoping you might consider making it an official offshoot of your brand. Once your cookbook launches and the show airs, you'll have a platform. We could use that to launch these educational initiatives. The request took me by surprise. Not just the business proposition, but the implication that Olivia saw our futures as connected, that she wanted to build something alongside me rather than separate from me. You're serious about this, I said softly. She nodded. More serious than I've been about anything in a long time. I want to do something meaningful. Mom. Something that honors where I came from instead of running from it. Tears pricked at my eyes. Nothing would make me happier than working with you on this. Olivia's smile was radiant. Really? You mean it? Absolutely. In fact, I added, thinking of my meeting earlier that day, I just spent hours defending the value of traditional cooking against corporate pressure to modernize and streamline. Having an educational component that actively preserves these traditions, that feels like a perfect extension of what I'm trying to accomplish. Olivia came around the desk and hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom, even when I gave up on everything you valued. I held her close, marveling at the journey that had brought us to this moment. 6 months ago, Olivia had stood in my kitchen dismissing my cooking as outdated and irrelevant. Now she was proposing we work together to share those very traditions with a wider audience. Life's most surprising ingredient, I reflected, was time, its ability to transform relationships, to ripen understanding, to blend distinct flavors into something unexpectedly harmonious. That evening, as we cooked dinner together in the kitchen that had become both home and television set, I watched Olivia move with growing confidence among pots and ingredients. Her hands were becoming more sure, her instincts more developed. She tasted and adjusted seasoning without measuring, smelled herbs before adding them, listened for the subtle changes in sound that indicated when onions had properly caramelized. She was finding her way back to an inheritance she had nearly rejected, not just recipes or techniques, but a way of being in the world that valued patience, tradition, sensory awareness, and the profound satisfaction of creating something nurturing with one's own hands. As we sat down to eat the meal we had prepared together, I realized that of all the unexpected successes that had come my way recently, the book deal, the television show, the product line, the magazine features, this reconciliation with my daughter was by far the most precious. I've been thinking, Olivia said, breaking a piece of bread, about what you said regarding the Gourmet Now meeting, that it wasn't courage so much as clarity that helped you stand your ground. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. I think I'm finally finding some clarity of my own, she said softly. About who I am, what matters to me, and the kind of life I want to live going forward. And what kind of life is that? I asked. She looked around the kitchen, taking in the well-worn countertops, the hanging copper pots, the window boxes, full of herbs, the handwritten recipe cards tucked into the cookbook stand. An authentic one, she replied. Messy and imperfect, but real. Connected to traditions worth preserving, but open to creating new ones too. It was everything I had ever hoped she would discover for herself, not because I had pushed her toward it, but because she had found her own way back to these values after testing alternatives that ultimately left her empty. What about Ryan? I asked gently. Does he have a place in this authentic life you're envisioning? Olivia's expression turned thoughtful. I don't know yet. That's the one piece of clarity I'm still searching for. Can he accept this version of me? Does he even want to? Or are we fundamentally moving in different directions now? Only time will tell, I said. But whatever happens, you're not alone in this journey. She smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. No, I'm not. and that makes all the difference. As the evening settled around us, I found myself reflecting on the strange, circuitous path that had led us here. My daughter had once fled from everything I represented, seeking a life of status and sophistication. I had once been dismissed as outdated, my skills and knowledge deemed irrelevant in a world of convenience foods and restaurant culture. Now, through an unexpected twist of fate, those very traditions had brought me success beyond anything I'd imagined. And more importantly, they had brought my daughter back to me, not because of the success itself, but because that success had finally opened her eyes to the value of what had been there all along. Sometimes, I realized, life's most important lessons can only be learned through experience, through trying alternatives and finding them wanting, through walking away and then choosing to return with new appreciation for what was left behind. As Olivia stood to clear the dishes, I saw in her movements echoes of myself at her age, capable, purposeful, connected to the simple rhythms of nurturing and sustenance that had defined women's work for generations. But I also saw something uniquely hers, a blend of traditional values with contemporary insights, a bridge between worlds that might help others find their way back to traditions worth preserving. The cookbook that had started this journey would launch in just 3 weeks. The television show would begin airing shortly after. My unexpected life as a culinary personality was about to begin in earnest, bringing challenges and opportunities I could scarcely imagine. But whatever came next, I knew that the most important ingredient in this new recipe for living had already been secured. The restoration of a relationship I had feared was lost forever, and the promise of new connections yet to be made through. The simple, profound act of sharing food prepared with love and intention. Some dishes couldn't be rushed. Some flavors needed time to develop, needed patience and faith in the process. Such was the case with family, too. Sometimes the most precious connections required seasoning with time, with forgiveness, with the humility to recognize that growth often came through unexpected paths. As Olivia and I finished cleaning the kitchen, I found myself filled with gratitude for the journey that had brought us here. Not despite its difficulties and detours, but because of them. Without the rejection, the dismissal, the years of feeling undervalued, would the current reconciliation feel so sweet? Without the contrast of what had been lost, would what had been regained shine so brightly? Life, like cooking, was rarely perfect. But in its imperfections, the scorched edges, the fallen soufflés, the experiments that didn't quite work out, lay the most valuable lessons, the most authentic experiences, the most meaningful connections. And that, after all, was the secret ingredient I had been trying to share all along. The day of my cookbook launch arrived with a flurry of activity. My kitchen, now familiar to the production team as we'd completed filming all 13 episodes of the first season, was transformed once again, this time into an elegant reception space for media and industry professionals. The production crew had arranged displays of my recipes throughout the house, each accompanied by photographs and the stories behind them. Charlotte arrived early, carrying a copy of my cookbook with reverent hands. "The first one off the presses," she said, presenting it to me with genuine emotion in her eyes. "I wanted you to have it before anyone else." I accepted the book, running my fingers over the embossed cover. A photograph of me in my kitchen, surrounded by the tools and ingredients that had defined my life's work. Eleanor's Kitchen, Timeless Recipes for Modern Living, read the title in elegant script. Below that, in smaller letters, Finding Meaning Through Tradition in a Fast-Paced World. Opening to the first page, I found the dedication I had written, months earlier. For my grandmother who taught me that cooking is love made visible. For my daughter, who is finding her way back to traditions worth preserving. And for everyone who believes that some things improve with time, recipes, relationships, and the wisdom to recognize what truly matters. "It's beautiful," I whispered, overcome with emotion. Charlotte squeezed my shoulder. "It's already breaking pre-order records." The first printing of 50,000 copies is nearly sold out before official release. We're rushing a second printing of 100,000. The numbers were staggering, far beyond anything I had imagined when this journey began. Do you think people will actually cook from it? Or will it just sit on coffee tables looking pretty? Both, probably, Charlotte admitted with a smile. But the ones who do cook from it, they'll find something genuine, something worth passing down. That's what matters, isn't it? I nodded, thinking of all the people who might discover or rediscover the simple joy of creating something with their own hands, of connecting to traditions that stretched back generations. That had always been my true goal, even before the unexpected fame and success. Upstairs, Olivia was getting ready for the launch party. She had taken an active role in planning the event, bringing her professional expertise to bear while ensuring everything remained true to my values. No flashy gimmicks, no trendy food stations, just honest, beautifully prepared dishes from the cookbook, served with warmth and care. When she came downstairs, I hardly recognized her. Not because she was dressed formally, though she was in a simple blue dress that complemented her eyes, but because of the quiet confidence she exuded. This wasn't the polished, slightly brittle poise she had cultivated as Ryan's wife, always conscious of appearances and judgments. This was something more genuine, a comfort in her own skin that had been missing for too long. "You look beautiful," I told her. She smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I feel good. Nervous for you, but good." "Any word from Ryan?" I asked gently. They had maintained careful distance over the past weeks, speaking occasionally, by phone but not meeting in person. Olivia had been clear that she needed space to think, and somewhat to my surprise, Ryan had respected that boundary. "He sent flowers this morning," she replied, "with a note saying he's proud of what you've accomplished and wishing us both well today. He won't be attending, though. He thought it might create tension." I nodded, appreciating his restraint. Whatever else might be said about Ryan, he was choosing not to make this day about their marital uncertainty. "Have you decided what you're going to do?" I asked. Olivia's expression turned serious. "I have, actually. I'm meeting with him tomorrow to talk. But today is about you and this amazing achievement. Let's focus on that." Before I could press further, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. From that moment on, the house filled with people: journalists, food critics, television producers, bookstore representatives, and culinary professionals, all eager to be part of what Cuisine Monthly had dubbed the most authentic voice in food publishing this decade. I circulated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and answering questions with a surreal sense of disbelief. Was this really happening? Was I, Eleanor Wilson, truly the center of attention in a room full of industry influencers who, just months ago, wouldn't have given me a second glance? "There she is, the woman of the hour," a familiar voice called out. I turned to find Meredith approaching with an older gentleman I didn't recognize, distinguished-looking, with silver hair and kind eyes behind horn-rimmed glasses. "Ellie, I'd like you to meet James Bennett, founder of Heritage Culinary Institute. James, this is Eleanor Wilson, though I'm sure she needs no introduction at this point." James extended his hand with a warm smile. "The pleasure is entirely mine, Ms. Wilson. Your cookbook is precisely the kind of work we try to encourage at the Institute, preserving culinary traditions while making them accessible to modern cooks." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely flattered. The Heritage Culinary Institute was renowned for its work, documenting and preserving food traditions from around the world. Your organization's research has been invaluable to many of us who care about these traditions. Which brings me to why I wanted to meet you, James continued. We're establishing a new division focused on American home cooking. The kind of recipes and techniques that were passed down through generations but are at risk of being lost in our convenience-focused culture. We'd like you to consider taking a leadership role in this initiative. I blinked in surprise. Me? I'm not a professional chef or a food historian. That's precisely why you're perfect, he countered. You represent the authentic home cook, someone who learned these traditions firsthand and can speak to their value in a way that resonates with ordinary people. Your success proves there's an appetite for this knowledge. My mind was racing. Another unexpected door opening, another opportunity I had never imagined for myself. I'm honored, I said honestly. But I should mention that my daughter and I have been developing plans for educational programs along similar lines. She's here somewhere. You should meet her. As if summoned by my words, Olivia appeared at my side, carrying a tray of miniature versions of my grandmother's apple hand pies, still warm from the oven. The aroma of cinnamon and buttery pastry wafted around us, momentarily distracting the small crowd that had gathered. Perfect timing, I said, making introductions. Olivia, this is James Bennett from the Heritage Culinary Institute. James, my daughter Olivia. I watched with pride as Olivia engaged James in conversation, confidently outlining the educational initiatives she had been researching. The passion in her voice was unmistakable, her marketing expertise evident in how she framed the potential impact of such programs. James listened with growing interest. This dovetails perfectly with what we're trying to accomplish, he said when she finished. Would you be open to discussing a potential collaboration? The Institute has the resources and academic credibility, but we need people with practical vision and implementation skills. Olivia glanced at me, her eyes shining with excitement. We'd be very interested in that conversation. The party continued around us, but in that moment, something crystallized for me. This unexpected journey, from dismissed homemaker to cookbook author and television host, had always been about more than personal validation. It had been about preserving something valuable, something in danger of being lost in our rush toward convenience and novelty. And now, through a series of events I could never have predicted, I had the platform to do exactly that. Not alone, but with my daughter beside me, bridging generations and perspectives. The evening progressed with speeches and toasts, with journalists requesting interviews and bookstore owners describing the excitement their customers had expressed about the upcoming release. Throughout it all, I found myself returning to that moment of clarity, that sense of purpose beyond personal success. As the last guest departed and the catering staff began cleaning up, Olivia and I retreated to the quiet of the back porch, each cradling a cup of tea. It was a triumph, Olivia said, gazing out at the garden where fireflies had begun their evening dance. Everyone's talking about pre-order numbers and publicity opportunities, but what struck me was how people responded to the actual content, the stories behind the recipes, the traditions you're preserving. I nodded, watching the fireflies blink on and off in the gathering darkness. That's what matters most to me. The commercial success is wonderful, of course, but if the book and show help people reconnect with these traditions, with the joy of cooking as an act of love and connection, that's the real achievement. Olivia set down her teacup. I need to tell you something, Mom, about my decision regarding Ryan. I turned to her, giving her my full attention. I'm listening. I've decided to file for divorce, she said quietly but firmly. I met with a lawyer last week to understand the process. Tomorrow I'm meeting Ryan to tell him face to face. Though I had suspected this might be her decision, hearing it stated so definitively still took me by surprise. Are you certain? Marriage can evolve? People can change? I've given it a lot of thought, she assured me. This isn't a reaction to one fight or a temporary feeling. Ryan and I want fundamentally different things from life. He measures success in status, achievements, appearances. I've realized I want something more authentic, even if it's less impressive from the outside. I reached for her hand. That's a brave decision. Not an easy one, I know. She squeezed my fingers. The strangest part is, I'm not devastated. Sad. Yes. 5 years of marriage isn't nothing. But also relieved. Like I've been holding my breath for years, trying to be someone I'm not, and finally, I can exhale. What will you do next? I asked. Practically speaking, I mean. Focus on developing these educational programs, hopefully in partnership with the Heritage Institute, she replied without hesitation. Find my own place. Something small, but with a real kitchen. She smiled at that. And just discover who I really am without trying to fit myself into someone else's expectations. Her clarity reminded me of my own journey over the past months, standing firm in my values despite corporate pressure, refusing to compromise what made my approach unique, even when it might have been financially advantageous to do so. I'm proud of you, I told her, not for the specific decision, but for having the courage to choose your own path, even when it's the harder one. I learned that from you, she said softly. Watching you stay true to yourself all these years, even when no one seemed to value what you offered. And then seeing how that authenticity became your greatest strength once people were ready to listen. We sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping tea and watching the fireflies. There would be challenges ahead for both of us. My new public life with its pressures and expectations, Olivia's divorce and career change, our collaborative work with the Heritage Institute. But in this moment of quiet reflection, I felt a deep certainty that we were moving in the right direction, individually and together. The weeks that followed the cookbook launch unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. My television show premiered, to enthusiastic reviews, with critics praising its refreshing authenticity in a genre too often dominated by gimmicks and personalities. The cookbook shipped to bookstores nationwide, with many reporting that their initial allocations sold out within days. I embarked on a modified version of the planned book tour, visiting a dozen cities in a month. At each stop, I was amazed by the turnout, not just curious onlookers, but people genuinely hungry for connection to cooking traditions that had been dismissed as outdated in our convenience-focused culture. My grandmother used to make a version of your apple pie. One young woman told me tearfully at a Chicago bookstore event. She passed away before I thought to ask for the recipe. Making yours brought back memories I thought were lost forever. Stories like hers reminded me again and again why this journey mattered beyond personal success or validation. I was preserving not just recipes, but connections. To our past, to each other, to a way of living that valued patience and process in a world increasingly focused on speed and convenience. Meanwhile, Olivia moved forward with her own transformation. Her meeting with Ryan had been difficult, but civil. He had been shocked by her decision despite the warning signs, unable to fully comprehend her desire for a life less focused on status and achievement. But faced with her quiet certainty, he had ultimately agreed to an amicable separation, sparing them both a contentious legal battle. She found a small but charming apartment near my house, with a kitchen she immediately began to renovate, replacing sleek, barely used appliances with more practical tools, painting cabinets a warm yellow, installing window boxes for herbs. It was a physical manifestation of her shifting priorities, a space designed for living rather than impressing. Our discussions with the Heritage Culinary Institute progressed rapidly. James Bennett was enthusiastic about our vision for community-based education programs that would document and teach traditional cooking methods. With the Institute's backing, we began developing pilot programs for schools, community centers, and intergenerational workshops that would pair seniors with young people eager to learn. On a warm Sunday afternoon in late summer, we gathered in my backyard for a small celebration. The television show's first season had wrapped filming. The cookbook had entered its fourth printing with nearly 500,000 copies sold, and the Heritage Institute had officially announced our partnership, generating excitement throughout the culinary education community. The guest list was intentionally intimate: Charlotte from the publishing house, Meredith from the production company, James from the Heritage Institute, and a few close friends who had supported me through the years when my cooking was appreciated by few beyond my immediate circle. Olivia had insisted on preparing most of the food herself, showcasing recipes she had mastered over the past months. Her confidence in the kitchen had grown steadily, her techniques becoming more assured, her instincts more developed. Watching her move between stove and counter, tasting and adjusting seasoning with natural ease, filled me with quiet joy. As we gathered around the table laden with dishes that represented both tradition and personal interpretation, I looked at the faces of those who had shared this unexpected journey and felt a surge of gratitude. "Before we eat," I said, raising my glass, "I'd like to propose a toast. To traditions worth preserving, to new beginnings built on solid foundations, and to the surprising paths that sometimes lead us exactly where we need to be." Glasses clinked, as everyone echoed the sentiment. Across the table, Olivia caught my eye and smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, free from the strain of trying to be someone she wasn't. After dinner, as guests lingered over coffee and dessert, Charlotte pulled me aside with an excited gleam in her eye. "I've been saving this news for the right moment," she said, her voice low but vibrant with excitement. "We've had interest from international publishers. The cookbook is going to be translated into 12 languages initially, with more likely to follow." The news was staggering. My recipes, the same ones my daughter had once dismissed as outdated and irrelevant, would now reach people around the world. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What makes these traditional American recipes appeal to international audiences?" Charlotte's answer was immediate and confident. Authenticity transcends borders. In a world where everything seems disposable and trending topics change daily, people everywhere are hungry for traditions with staying power, for connections to something genuine. Her words resonated deeply with everything I had come to understand about my unexpected success. It wasn't just about the recipes themselves, but about what they represented. A counterbalance to our culture of convenience and novelty. A reminder that some things improve with time and care rather than constant reinvention. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and Olivia had gone home to her new apartment, I sat alone in my kitchen, the space that had always been my sanctuary and was now also my professional domain. My grandmother's recipe box sat on the counter, its metal edges worn smooth by decades of use. I opened it and ran my fingers over the handwritten cards, some yellowed with age, others bearing stains from years of reference during cooking. These weren't just instructions for preparing food. They were artifacts of a lineage, tangible connections to women whose hands had creased these papers, whose wisdom had been distilled into notes about pinches of this and dashes of that. For so long, I had preserved these recipes out of personal devotion, out of respect for traditions I valued even when they seemed increasingly out of step with modern life. I never expected that devotion would one day resonate with thousands of strangers, that my quiet insistence on doing things the traditional way would ultimately become my greatest professional asset. Life, like cooking, rarely followed a precise recipe. The most remarkable results often came from unexpected combinations, from embracing mistakes and finding new paths forward when the original plan went awry. My daughter had once fled from everything I represented, seeking a life of sophistication and status that seemed the antithesis of my traditional values. I had once been dismissed as outdated, my skills and knowledge deemed irrelevant in a world of convenience foods and restaurant culture. Now, through a series of events neither of us could have predicted, we had both found our way to something authentic. She by shedding external expectations to reconnect with her true self, I by standing firm in my values until the world circled back to recognize their worth. The cookbook that sat on my counter, with my name embossed on its cover and my stories woven throughout its pages, represented more than professional success. It was a testament to the power of remaining true to oneself, even when that truth seems out of sync with prevailing trends and values. And the television show, the product lines, the educational initiatives, all of these extensions of my unexpected career shared the same core message. Tradition matters. Connection matters. Taking time to nurture ourselves and others through food prepared with intention and love matters. My phone chimed with a text message from Olivia. Just wanted to say again how proud I am of you. Not just for the success, but for never changing who you are, even when no one seemed to value it. I hope I can be half as authentic in my new chapter. Love you, Mom. I smiled, typing back a quick response. You're already there. And I couldn't be prouder of the woman you're becoming. Love you too. Setting down the phone, I ran my hands along the familiar countertop where I had prepared thousands of meals, taught my daughter her first cooking lessons, and now filmed a television show that would reach households across the country. This kitchen had witnessed my life's most important moments, the joys and sorrows, the solitary meals and festive gatherings, the everyday acts of care that had defined my identity, long before anyone thought to call me a culinary personality. Whatever came next in this unexpected journey, more books, more shows, expanded educational programs, this would remain my center, my authentic space. Not because it was now associated with professional success, but because it had always been where I felt most truly myself. My daughter had once called my cooking old-fashioned, never imagining that those traditional methods would one day secure a 7-figure cookbook deal and television show. But the true value of this success wasn't measured in contracts or sales figures. It was measured in the restoration of a relationship I had feared was lost forever, in the affirmation that staying true to one's values eventually finds its reward, and in the opportunity to preserve traditions worth passing down to future generations. Some recipes improved with time, some truths required patience to be recognized, and some journeys, though long and circuitous, ultimately led exactly where they were meant to go all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.